Hello and welcome to another episode of the Truth About Real Estate Investing Show, the little tiny podcast for real estate investors in Canada that could. We are currently ranked number 81 in iTunes in the business category, something that is still astounding to me. Anyways, my name is Erwin Szeto. I am the host and producer of this show. I do my own bookings, so apologies in advance. Wow. It is a Canadian show, so I will apologize just as much as any Canadian does. Anyways, this week's guest actually asked me while we were slumming it at Whole Foods for lunch. I've mentioned it for a couple of weeks now, with gratuity being added on to almost every single bill at restaurants. I've been going for more takeout, but preferably healthy takeout. So we were, Melissa Dupuis and I were at Whole Foods for lunch. I had 2 packages of wild salmon sushi, while Melissa had cod with 2 sides. Cost was $45 with no tip. Melissa asked me, when did I realize the power of the Smith maneuver, which is the tax benefit when interest expense is incurred on borrowed funds. In my example, from my home equity line or from other rental properties, when they're being used for investment purposes, are tax deductible. I'm not an accountant, so please do seek professional advice. In my journey, I personally took accounting through high school, and each year of my 4 years of university, I actually considered becoming an accountant, as their wages as a new graduate are quite good, in case anyone's looking for career advice. Also, as part of business school, we studied investment banking, commercial banking, as I considered being one of those as well. My point is, I've studied debt and equity financing and studied businesses who did so successfully using debt and equity, both successfully and in failure, resulting in bankruptcy. It's partly my business training and conservative nature, which has led me to become a real estate investor. Because it's based on land, which is an incredibly hard asset in short supply, and positive cash flow income properties, which is no different than Buffett's philosophy that assets have to make you money in order to be a good investment. And also, our properties are in incredible demand, and also they're quite liquid. They're the most liquid of real estate investments and real estate properties. And to not over leverage, as we actually have been putting down 35% on our most recent purchases to maintain a loan to value, but this isn't really our choice. It's been imposed on us by our lenders. But yeah, our portfolio is pretty low leverage compared to what's being promoted out there. Literally, one of my clients let me know that he was at an event where the pitch of the coaching program was for fast growth through high leverage. Yeah, I can't disagree more. And the proof is in the pudding, as we see several investors now who are now bankrupt or going bankrupt. Anyways, academically, I've understood the power of leverage, but it wasn't until reading Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki and that I understood how to apply it in business. In this case, income properties. And at the time, around when I was 25 years old, my girlfriend was doing better than I was, in that she was actually taking action and buying income property. So from there, I got to witness firsthand how to use the power of leverage via debt in order to build up a real estate portfolio. And then again, through the financial crisis, the economic crash of 2008, 2009, as a real estate investor back then, we actually had no vacancy in our portfolio of 5 rental properties. And whenever we had turnover, rents actually went up. Versus my stock portfolio at the time, I was a pretty green stock investor at the time, even though I thought I was better and I was a little bit educated on the subject, but a little education doesn't go very far. It was at that moment I decided to invest more heavily into my real estate education, including business and economics. I happened to take economics 4 years in my university as well. It's through all the research and practice that I decided we would only use debt to invest in real estate that we control and that cash flows and not for anything else. It's just my level of risk tolerance and as far as I come in my journey, there just isn't another asset class with so much data that supports investing in real estate in the Golden Horseshoe of Ontario. Between inflation caused by central banks, when that stops, please let me know. Supply constraints on land and building, housing, the excessive demand from immigration, shrinking number of occupants per home, requiring more homes to be built. This is all really bad news for tenants and anyone who doesn't own a house. The writing is on the wall for real estate investors where housing prices are going. So yeah, we will continue to invest in real estate using debt. But I'm no financial advisor. Please seek professional advice. I just have 75 millionaire real estate clients who are self-made from investing in income properties. So I don't count their principal residences. So again, we have 45 at this time, self-made millionaire clients, and we're looking for more, a couple hundred more preferably. There's honestly nothing more in life that I enjoy than seeing my clients successful. We do have, and speaking of future clients, we have 30 investors joining us for an educational tour of our clients' small multifamily conversion projects, duplex and triplex, this coming Saturday in Hamilton, Ontario. All proceeds going to the Hamilton Basket Brigade to provide warm winter clothing to poor school children in Hamilton. Unfortunately, it's sold out, but we are happy to announce our first ever Erwin event coming up Saturday, March 25th. I will be giving an economic and market update. The feedback on YouTube was incredibly positive, asking for more updates from myself. Coach Stephen Phillips of HGTV fame for my team will be sharing tactical advice on how to invest in the Durham region, including Belleville and Kingston. And being tax season, luckily we were able to steal Cherry away from her tax season duties. For anyone who doesn't know, Cherry is likely the favorite real estate accountant in our industry, and she's making herself available on this day, Saturday, March 25th, to educate us on the most important tax implications we must absolutely get right this tax season to avoid thousands of dollars in fines and get us some tax savings. The meeting will be followed by a tour of properties in Oshawa and a networking lunch. How exciting is that? So stay tuned for details. Again, our February tour sold out pretty quickly, sold out in a week. So space is limited for this event in Durham that we're doing as well, Saturday, March 25th. We'll be releasing details shortly. You do not want to miss this event. On to this week's show. We have something a little different, a real estate investor with a lot of heart in Melissa Dupuis. We rarely have investors on this show who target those on social assistance, but the everyday tenant. But Melissa has, with her renovated, repositioned 10-bedroom rooming house, legal rooming house. We don't have many rooming house investors on the show, so we do spend some time on the subject in terms of numbers, target tenants, regulations, and of course the numbers. For example, this 10-bedroom house, Melissa paid $525,000 for on the buy, and then after being fully renovated, it should rent for close to $6,600 in rent per month. Melissa is truly a sophisticated investor, as she's an avid student and action taker. She has several other properties as well. She does some flips. She does some duplex conversions, and actually she's doing a triplex conversion right now. She's converting one of her duplexes into a triplex. So she details that, the decision-making process, the costs, and the rents, how much rents will go up, what kind of permits she needed to go through, all sorts of things. Specific to this property, she needed to improve cash flow because we are in a rising interest rate environment. As always, real estate is a team sport. Melissa has engaged in hiring a coach, and she also has a mentor. Shout out to Christian. So she details how she found them and how it's worked out. You probably want to pay attention to this part. Melissa's did a good job of obtaining some very quality advice, professionals. And then the mentor is free. So for free quality mentorship is worth its weight in gold. Whatever. Melissa is also a property manager and owner of Athena Property Management, Inc., servicing the Niagara region in Hamilton. She's also a land banker in the country of Belize. To follow Melissa, you can find her at athenapmi.com, and you can search Athena Property Management on Instagram and Facebook. Please enjoy the show. Hi, Melissa. What's keeping you busy these days?
Hi, Erwin.
Hi.
Everything. I'm in property management, so.
You do a lot.
It's crazy.
We have a lot to cover today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how things go here.
All right. I wouldn't look too forward. No one listens to this show anyways. So one thing that stands out in your investing that to me is I call it socialized real estate investing. Again, I've seen a lot of investing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know many people that not target, but people who operate, for example, what I would categorize as socialized real estate investing. Can you elaborate on like for example, you have a legal rooming house. Can you explain what a legal rooming house is?
Yeah, so rooming houses, generally speaking, are probably a lot more popular in the Toronto area, but where this one is in Niagara, legal ones are much harder to come by and are often trap houses to boot. So this is a legal rooming house. It's in the city of Welland. It has a special zoning designation that the city created for that. So when I purchased it, there were actually a few investors that were interested in the property as well too, but because they couldn't build another, secondary unit on the property, things like that, there were some restrictions that wasn't appealing to everyone. Mm-hmm. So for me, I just looked at it as, at the time, it was rented to a group of female international students who were quite lovely, but the previous owner had maintained what he had to, but there's definitely some room for improvement in the common areas and things that I saw that I could do with it. So my intention in purchasing it was that there are a lot of people, particularly with the cost of housing right now, who maybe wanted to live independently but don't want the hassle of outright dealing with a roommate or can't afford an entire place on their own self-contained. And so I felt that there's some opportunity with that to expand mm-hmm. who we were renting to there mm-hmm. and to also provide a quality home. So that's what we've done. And I've owned it for probably about a year and a half coming up on. And during that time, we've done some improvements. We've allowed natural turnover to take its course. We did let all of the ladies that lived in the home know that a transition would be coming in terms of who we were renting to. So if that meant that they no longer felt it was suitable for them, they had time to look for another place. If they wanted to stay, of course, they were welcome to do so. Mm-hmm. We just wanted them to know because it had been all ladies up to that point. So some wanted that, right? So there's been some natural turnover, and we have had a handful of different people in, some that are on fixed income social assistance, so could be receiving disability payment along those lines. Others who are, I would say most of the people in the home actually currently are working, and they're working a more entry-level type of jobs, but they like the community that comes with living in a rooming house. So I really just wanted to focus, particularly with that acquisition, was on building a community home. I have some other ideas on what I wanted to do with the place, but of course it all costs money and takes some time. So we'll see how that comes together in the coming months.
Fabulous. Do you know my friend Anna Scott? Sorry, not wrong Anna. Darn it. Let me introduce you to Anna another time. She has numerous rooming houses.
That's the lady, but she's doing it for seniors.
Seniors, yes.
Yes. I actually went back and tracked down that podcast and watched it. It was very interesting.
Oh, did you reach out to her?
Nope.
Oh, you should. She's lovely.
Yeah, she seems great.
Yeah. Okay. Apologies to Anna Scott. Apologies to Anna, whose last name eludes me right now. So let's can we paint a mental picture of what this house looks like? So what year was it built? How big is it?
I want to say it was built in probably around the 40s or so. Again, after time, I got a little fuzzy on the details. It has one kitchen on the main floor. It's 2 levels. It has 6 rooms on the main floor, and it has 5 on the upper. There's a bathroom.
So a total 11.
There's 11 rooms. There's 2 bathrooms in the house.
What?
Yeah. So there's no actual. So at one point.
2 full baths is it? No powder rooms, nothing. Just 2 full bathrooms.
So one's a full bathroom, one has a shower, sink, and a toilet.
Okay.
So we did some renovation work in that bathroom to start. There's a bit of finished work in it, but it was previously done probably not to any code that was acceptable. So we addressed that.
Common in investment properties, yes.
Yes.
Not acceptable for our standards, but yes.
So the basement itself is not really conducive to using it for anything other than function, we'll call it. So we can't really do much. Probably not even storage due to the age of the home. So we've just focused on removing all the items that were down there and getting rid of them and just continuing some cleanup work in there. There was previously a 12th room on the upper floor that at some point the fire department had required that become another exit. So there's actually a space there where we're going to make that a little bit of a sitting area with a couch and whatnot, so that not everyone needs to be in the room all the time. Some of the rooms are smaller, they're 8 by 10. Some are quite large because they used to be double rooms. So we're working on improving that as a common space. Mm-hmm. We've put all new flooring throughout, vinyl plank. It was previously laminate and not in great shape, so that's really improved the look of it. In the kitchen itself, there is a sink and a stove, and that's it for 11 rooms. So what we did is we actually we're just finishing up a second cooking area with just a cooktop and another double sink. So there's actually 2 spots in the kitchen for people to cook at. So now that we've got that one in place, then we're going to actually demo the other side because it's not in great shape, put some new cupboards in there, new sink, and then improve some of the storage area in the kitchen so that people don't have to keep their food and stuff in their rooms, which is what they're currently doing. So and that in turn hopefully will give them more space within their room when they have a secure spot to put it outside of the room and help with just access and functionality. So we're doing that. Another thing we actually did too was an electrical upgrade. So the existing panel in the place was a Commander, which apparently is old and no longer good. So the electrician replaced that, and they also put 15 or 20 amp plugs in every single room as well, so that if someone wants to have a mini fridge in their room or run something that draws a bit more power in their room, they can do so. Because currently there were, I think, 4 fridges and 5 fridges in common areas. Right, that's a lot of fridges to be running, the big fridges. And so again, we're just looking on reducing that, giving people spots in the rooms to have a mini fridge, have what they need in there, improving the storage in the kitchen, another cooking area in there as well too. And we'll want to do some exterior work on the grounds in the summertime as well.
Okay. So can you share what you paid for the property?
That was...
you brought notes. I love how you prepared.
I did. So I purchased that for $525,000.
What's your renovation budget?
I don't want to say I didn't have a budget. It's not that I don't have a budget. It's that we've just been managing things as we can go here. So So far we've
you must have had a ballpark when you bought it.
Yeah, I earmarked about 15 to 20,000, figuring we'll see what we can accomplish within this, and then take it as it goes. Expected a bit of a learning curve as well too. So for example, when we took over management of the property, all the residents were responsible for cleaning common areas. And that's okay for day to day, but in terms of the deeper cleaning, when you have community living, not everyone wants to take responsibility for that particularly. So we actually bring in a cleaning service. So we wanted to factor in that there were some things that we need to do in terms of repair and fixing it, but also that there might be some additional costs or things that we think would be best on an ongoing basis for expenses to the property. So I didn't want to overcommit to it. So, and the rooms we've just been doing as we go. So, I mean, you put some new flooring, you repair the walls, you paint it, we upgrade the furniture. So it might be $1,500 or so per room, $2,000 per room to do that. And that just depends on when the rooms become available. So.
And it's an interesting property that you described the way you took it over. Like, I'm shocked that such a busy property would have laminate floors. For example, and that's a pro tip. Like vinyl plank, extremely now common in many circles, including even new condo developments are doing vinyl plank because it's so durable and inexpensive, and it looks great.
Yeah, it is. It's easy to put in. We did remove the laminate underneath because I said this has been here forever, and if water does get under, it could.
It bubbles up.
Right, so we removed that, and it's just what a difference flooring makes, right? It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that
it covers such a large area, it makes such a big impression.
It really does, and I think that the residents that are there like to see that we are making improvements to the home and to the common area, and they enjoy that. They like knowing that the landlord's going to take care of those things. So So that's good. And we do what we can. I mean, there's no mistaking that this is an older house, that there are some things like I don't know that it was necessarily purpose built for this. So when you go into a purpose built place that caters to people who rent rooms or have their private bathrooms, that's one thing. But that's not this. It will never be that. But it's just more of a what's reasonable? What can we do to make this comfortable, enjoyable? In the summertime, I actually want to put a new compost on the outside so that all the organic waste can just go into that, and then if someone's interested in intending to a garden out there, they'll have compost to be able to do it. Right. And again, foster a little bit more of the community piece. There is a derelict garage in the back that it needs to be torn down. It's not really harming anyone where it is right now, but it is on the list to do that at some point. I have no idea what that's going to cost, so we just kind of put the focus on the house itself. Let's address the things that we need to there, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, it's been good. It's had its pain points, but I mean, it was new. It was a completely new and different style of housing that I'd never managed before. Right. So it's but it's good. It's settled down.
So what kind of fire code requirements, for example, that are required for operating a rooming house?
So we have to get a fire inspection done every year, which we do in the summer. We bring in a company to do that. They have all the smoke detectors, they have alarms, we have emergency lighting, fire rated doors on each door closers, fire rated hardware. So that's the extent of it. Pretty standard stuff, I would say.
Oh, standard for you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure most real estate investors are not familiar unless they have a rooming house or an apartment building. Or at least a commercial property, fair. Some sort of commercial office property.
That's fair.
Actually, no, we don't have to do fire inspections. We don't have a stove here.
Generally speaking, anything that's got a few rental units or more does require an annual fire system testing and an inspection. And there's usually some other requirements throughout the year as well too. But that for that type of thing is pretty common. So we do them for a few properties. So that's why I say it's standard.
How much is that per year for just the inspection?
I think it was a few $100.
Yeah, it's nothing significant.
It wasn't huge, and we do maintain an alarm monitoring system as well too. I think that's around $50 or $60 a month, so that if the alarm is triggered in the house, then the monitoring system actually calls whoever we designate for them to call, determine if there's actually an emergency, and kind of go from there.
Right. Oh, does it go to 911 or does that go straight to the fire department?
It goes to the monitoring system, who takes the call and says there's been an alert on the fire alarm system, and can someone check on it? Right. Most of the time it's nothing.
Right. And this is required by, who requires this? Which government body?
I don't know that that's required by the government, but the fire department does like that it's monitored, and the insurance company could very well require it. I forget now.
Right. Yeah, just trying to explain to the listener that there's many more requirements for rooming houses. So for example, you said your doors are fire rated, and that's every bedroom.
Yes.
Self-closing?
Yes. No. The doors are not self-closing unless they are. So where are the self-closing doors located? We have our entry door into the property. There's a little vestibule, and then there's the entry door into the house itself. So that one has a self-closer on it. The one to the kitchen, there's 2 doors off the kitchen. Those have self-closers on them as well too. And I think everything else is free, open, and close.
Sprinkler system, smoke alarms in every bedroom?
Not required. Smoke alarms, yeah.
Every bedroom?
Yeah.
Interconnected?
No, not all of them.
Is the visual impaired ones too that blind you?
No.
Thank God.
No, they're
if you're not visually impaired, you're going to be blinded by these things.
Yeah, they're quite bright. I remember one time,
audio impaired.
A tenant calling me, they're going off, and we could see it coming down the street. It was strobing out across the street. I'm like, that's really bright. If they're doing their job, but wow.
Yeah, I don't get it. If you're deaf, these strobes are blinding.
And now you can't see either.
Now you can't see either. Great.
Yeah. So thankfully we don't have to deal with those ones, but it's yeah.
Yeah, and if you can't hear, now you're deaf. But I'm sure it's for all in the name of safety. Yes. And also, again, you mentioned these are rare. In my experience in Hamilton, for example, these are usually in very busy areas. Generally very busy areas on very busy streets or near very busy streets. Like the ones I can think of are like near on Concession Road in Hamilton, for example. So again, it's a very busy road, usually accessible by public transit. That seems to be the commonality among these things, of these specifically rooming houses. A common use of rooming houses I find is like, for example, is like student rentals, but those are not necessarily legal.
That's true. That's true. And we don't really largely deal in student rentals per se. I mean, sometimes we rent to people who are students, but that's not our primary market.
No, I want to ask you about that. Why the decision to shift from international students? I'm guessing these are Niagara College students. Why the decision to shift from students to
not students.
To non-students, right.
To not students. I just really felt that this house honestly could serve our community better, and that there's plenty of people out there who want to rent to students, and I will let them do that.
Right.
Again, some of our residents there are still students. Many of them are employed. Maybe they finished school at some point and they're working, or they're working and going to school, and some are on fixed social assistance, and it's a bit of a motley crew, but you know, again, it's not that we haven't had our problems. If anyone followed any of my social media, they'll see that I had to personally eject someone the other day, and that was an entertaining Friday night. But those kinds of problems are actually pretty rare for me.
Why the ejection? So is there a button that throws them out the window?
Smoking in the building.
Oh my God! Seriously?
Yeah.
There's a fire alarm in your room. There's a smoke alarm.
Oh yeah,
in your
she
room.
took the battery out.
Oh, that's good. That's good for fire safety.
Yeah, so I called for a police escort to remove her from the property because she was not agreeing on my assessment of what we should be doing next, shall we say. And there was a little bit of yelling back and forth.
Right.
And I wasn't willing to tolerate that in the residence. You know, when you put other people's safety at risk, and you knowingly, blatantly do so. I had actually stopped in there at that time to have a conversation with her. She was supposed to move out in a week anyways. Okay. She was supposed to move out in a week anyways.
So her lease was terminating, so you didn't have to go through like filing with the board or anything like that?
Well, no. So and this one, no. So she was moving out in a few days. She had given some attitude to some of our staff on the phone. She was supposed to stay until February the 3rd, you know, said, hey, you know, there's going to be a prorated rent amount for those days. No, there's effing not. Was quite rude, hung up the phone, and I said, okay, I'm just going to pop in there and just see if I can have a conversation with her. And there was, I mean, the kitchen smelled like an ashtray, so I was really happy with that. And it was quite obviously coming from her room, so we had a bit of a conversation. I said, like, what are you doing smoking in here? I stopped to have a talk with you. You were rude to our staff. So on top of that, clear no smoking policy. You just simply can't. And yeah, so she was quite rude, and I gave it back to her at the end of the day, quite frankly, and told her to pack her stuff and get out. And she said I couldn't make her, and I said, yes, I can. I'm calling for your escort right now. And so I called for the police, and they came, and they did remove her from the property. They asked if I would be willing to let her stay for the few days, give her more time. And I'm not necessarily saying that it felt good to throw someone out essentially on the street instantaneously and say, figure it out, good luck. But it's the consequences of her own actions. And given that she was smoking in the home, and there's a house full of other people who are now exposed to that, and kind of other things that had been brought to my attention at that point, I just said, we're at the end of the road here. You know, you knew, and you violated the rules, and that's it. So
yeah, she put everyone else at risk.
Yeah, and then I did have a conversation with one of the residents after that as well too. I stopped in to check on how the kitchen renovations were coming along, and she said, oh yeah, that was kind of happening before. And I said, please, you guys are all very agreeable and peaceful here, but when there's a problem like that, let us know right away, please, so I can address it, because we would not subject you to dealing with things like this. And after this woman was removed from the home, I then sent out a communication to everyone. I can broadcast stuff out to everyone, and basically to ensure that the front door was locked when they left, and that if she came back on the premises, to let me know right away, and that I'm apologizing for them having to deal with that, right? So that's good, and everyone's quite happy it was dealt with, but I said, I can't deal with something I don't know about, right?
Mental health issue, you think?
You know, I'm not really sure, but at that point it didn't really matter, I guess. She was able to arrange for a ride for someone to pick her up, and off she went, so.
challenging. Oh, so my natural question is, how do rooming houses fit under Residential Tenancy Act?
They're covered under the RTA.
So she had full rights as any other tenant then?
She did not, because one of my adult children does live on site.
Oh.
So they share a common area. Mm-hmm.
So your property does not fall under RTA then?
Not this one.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and I think that's actually a common misconception, is that many people do think that if you rent to students that they have to move at the end of the term, or that if you rent by the room, that you have this ability to do what I had to do in that case, and that is not the case. They are protected by the RTA. So we have, in this case, a rental contract that sets out very clearly that, number one, you understand that this is a private contract and rental agreement, that you're not covered by the RTA. You don't have those protections. And here are the rules of the house that we have to follow. Mm-hmm. Here's the circumstances under which, a person gives notice to move out, that we can eject you immediately, essentially at our discretion if we feel that there's a need for, and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then that's what they sign as their rental agreement. So, so I had that ability, and I think that probably makes me also a little more liberal now in who we accept, because most people, they just want a home, they want somewhere to live. Mm-hmm. And if they're respectful, then we're respectful and everyone's all good, right? But if they're not, then I have the ability to just remove them. Right.
So this is not your traditional rooming house. You have a lot more protection for yourself.
It's not. Now, some of the residents have been there before that child moved in, so they do have protections under RTA.
Okay.
But new people coming in currently do not, so.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah.
Because my experience with the police and tenants usually isn't good. What did you have to explain to the police so that they would come? Because usually they won't come. Usually they say it's tribunal issues.
So I called and explained to them the issue, and I just said that we have a resident, an occupant here, who does not want to leave. I want her removed from the property, and there's not protection in the RTA.
Okay.
And so they took that call, and then the officer that they sent out essentially needed to verify that what I was telling him was true, because how many landlords will say, oh no, I live on site, they just keep a room there, but they don't actually live there, right? And unfortunately, that's what makes it even harder, because the police will get sued if they eject someone that they don't have the right to do so. And they do. So they're quite cautious, in my experience. They're quite cautious in making sure that you can prove that there is that relationship, that person does live there, that they do in fact live there permanently, and that they've been there before that tenant moved in. So he verified all of that. Yes.
Just with paperwork, or did you have to go into the room?
They actually wanted to speak with them.
Oh, cool.
It didn't matter what paperwork I showed them.
Right, of course.
He also wanted to speak with them.
Uh-huh.
So they did so, and it was just a brief. Yeah, great here, awesome, and then he carried out.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
They did their job.
Yeah.
That's funny. I'm just so happy they did their job.
Yeah. I've been in situations where they've questioned what I was able to provide them, and I don't think that they were wrong in doing so, but my hands are tied at that point. Unless you can produce what they're asking for, then the risk that they take is great too. So they just simply won't. So.
Super cool. And your child is in the property. Do they have a responsibility? Do they get subsidized rent? Are they the super?
No, I don't give them any special responsibility.
You're just a tenant. They pay you rent and everything.
Yeah, I mean, they're an independent person who lives on their own, and this happens to be what they can afford, and they get treated, I'll say, largely like anyone else. I don't have any problems with them, which is wonderful. And
they're a good tenant. Good.
Yeah, they are. We can't always guarantee our kids are the tenants we want them to be either, but they're lovely, they're good, and I don't put the pressure on them to do things like report back to me and stuff like that, because I don't want them to feel potentially ostracized within the home either, right? So they just kind of live there and carry on like anyone else.
Fascinating. Okay. So if we can go back to numbers, you paid $525 for it.
Yep.
What is a room rent for?
It depends on the size. So
what were the ranges in pay? You mentioned earlier, like 8 by 10 is the smaller.
Yeah, so that was around the $425 mark. And then there were actually sharing rooms where two girls would each live in one room and pay their own rent, and that was $275 or so per person. So what we've actually done, so essentially you would have this large bedroom where it previously had two beds in it, and then you have like a smaller room connected to it, and that's where they would have their desks. So when one of those rooms became vacant, we pulled everything out of there, and we put new flooring in there, and we put in a couch and a coffee table and an air exchanger in the window. It's on a boiler system, so you don't have air circulation like a forced air furnace. And so we supplied that. So now they have like a personal living room area, and then we've put a double bed in the area where the desks used to be. So now they almost have like a small bedroom off of that. So they have a bedroom and a private living area. So that one we rented for $850, all inclusive, and that seems to be, I think, competitive in the market there. We do have to keep in mind the rents are only going to stretch so far, given there are only 2 bathrooms in the home, and there's not a lot of common area aside from the kitchen, really, in that little sitting area I referred to. So, some rooms in, I'll say, nicer homes, more geared towards students, would probably rent for at least that, but for where we are there. So that actually greatly improved it. I had to do something. The home did need some repairs, and the rents have to go up to offset the cost of that. This doesn't come for free. It's significant work that I had to do. Electrical work is expensive. My electrician's wonderful, but he costs money, right? Putting his kids through college. So,
well, you're saying you had to upgrade outlets in every room. That's 11 rooms you had to upgrade, plus everything else.
And the house panel itself, right? So I think important and necessary work, but that has to come from somewhere. So we're able to do that, and that way we don't have to deal so much with the sharing room. There are currently still 3 rooms that are considered sharing rooms, but again, with natural turnover, we will then address that.
Those are legacy tenants?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Students?
Some are. I don't have a ton of information on them because we inherited them, right? And that's pretty typical when you inherit tenants. You don't always have the same things as when you place them yourself. We got that they were all international students.
Okay.
That's the information we got. So,
okay.
but they're all good. They're all lovely. So we're not trying to move anyone along any faster than they want to go.
Yeah, my experience has been pretty good with international students in terms of they're nice, they're not trouble. I just find that my experience has been they're messy.
I don't find them to be that bad. We've been in all the rooms. Everyone's pretty tidy.
Partly because we gave them a pretty big house.
Yeah.
So, you have a big house, you have a lot of money, you tend to fill it.
Yeah.
And they filled it. Canada Goose, whatever, $300 shoes, brand new bicycles.
We don't see that in this house.
Right.
No.
Different demographic. Different, your property would attract different than mine. And we'll get to that, actually.
It definitely would, yeah.
So what's the total? So how much do you think you spent in renos so far?
Oh, geez, I didn't write that number down.
Ballpark?
It's probably around the 20,000 mark, I would say.
Wow, I think I would have spent an electrician alone.
I don't think he was that much. He cost, but I don't think it was. Yeah, I think it was around there.
That's a good electrician. Probably don't want to share that name.
No, he doesn't work for the general public. He works for me. Well, he works for himself, but he'll do work for me.
And
so.
What do you think the total rent is for the building?
So right now, currently, we're at about. So we're just under $4,500 in rent right now, but we have 3 rooms that are vacant. So the one that I just had to eject someone, another one that's ready for rent and up for rent, and then a third that needs a bit of a refresh on it. So when it's fully occupied, it'd probably be around $5,500 to $6,000. I think I estimated at that, at least with some of the current tenants there. So when some of the current tenants do turn over and those rents are a little bit higher, it'd probably be around the $6,600 a month or so mark.
Okay, these are pretty impressive numbers. Is everyone inclusive?
Yeah, everyone's inclusive, and
but they have to pay their own internet, right?
No, that does include the internet.
Oh, nice. You got a commercial package?
It's just a regular internet package. I don't know.
For 11 people?
I don't know. No one's complained to me, so it's okay. So we need that to run our security system, and our alarm system I mentioned for monitoring. So we did that, and we give them the code and they hook in, and there's no issues. Not that I've heard.
Nice.
So
Yeah, I included internet once, and I got like mail from like I don't know who sent me mail, but like our kids were downloading like Game of Thrones.
Okay.
So I got some sort of copyright infringement
Oh no.
letter in the mail from our internet provider.
It's been pretty quiet. I'm not usually a fan of providing internet, and given the choice in most places, I say don't do it.
Right.
But sometimes it makes sense, and in a place where you have like a house like this, to me, is every single person going to go and hook up their own internet? It's a little much. It's 11 rooms, right?
Right.
So.
You must have a strong internet provider.
Yeah,
to have no complaints, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I only got complaints. For our student rentals, for example, we let the kids do it themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. And then just like for example, like there's always support needed. Internet goes down. We don't want them to contact us to contact the internet service provider. We contact them directly, and they'll do that if it's your account, right? Yeah. So and also we want to include less utilities. Just for our own sanity.
Yeah, and in this one, I mean, we kind of have to be inclusive, and so we opted to include the internet. It's been fine. I mean, right now, the cap rate when I purchased it, when I projected it at, so if we were at the full rents that it has the potential, and with the expenses, I figured the cap rate would probably run about 6.5–7%, which is really good. With the rates having gone up, of course, this is a commercial mortgage, right? So it's not your typical residential mortgage. So the costs that come with getting commercial mortgage or commercial appraisal, $2,500 to $3,000. You have loan reviews that need to happen. The rate's generally a little bit higher. It was Libro Credit Union that actually funded this property.
Oh, Libro, out of London.
Yeah, so, and they've been good to deal with, but of course it was a variable rate mortgage, and so the numbers don't look as good on that right now. But it's not something that we can't manage and withstand. You know, these things happen in real estate. So,
what kind of terms? Like 30% down? What kind of variable is it? Did they have any sort of discount from prime?
A little fuzzy on that now. It was 25 to 30% down that I had to put.
Right, which is typical commercial. You have to put more money down than anything residential.
It was fine. It was fine. Yeah. So I went through a broker on that one who was able to source it. They did a great job with it because of the number of properties that we own. It's not your traditional aggregate funding and get pre-approved and whatnot, right? Everything's a case-by-case basis. So it was actually really great that this was a commercial mortgage because they look at the viability of the property itself. So they looked at it when I bought it and said, this actually looks good, we will lend on this. So that's wonderful. I really want to make sure that the property is positioned well, that when I do have to renew that loan, that they will look at it and still feel the same way because the costs of borrowing have gone up. So so I'm still confident in the viability of the property. I think that, again, we've learned in how to manage some things that are pointed out by residents to us. Like we try to listen to them and give as much as we can to what they're asking for. So so that's good, and also foster the fact that they're all adults and they also need to take responsibility for maintaining things and caring for the property and that kind of thing, because I'm not a babysitter. So so that it's been good. It's definitely for them to have a different management style that was in there before. It takes time to get used to, but we're doing good.
I imagine they gotta be happy. It's a bit of pain with the disruption from the renovations, but
again, no one there's a
improving.
complainer. No one's complaining about that. We just let them know, hey, we're going to be doing some work in here. When we're heavy around exam time, we do just say, like there was a period where we said we're not doing any renovations right now because we recognize some of you in exams and maybe in meetings and stuff like that. But then, hey, you're going to expect we're going to be on site. You're going to see this, and
right.
No one's complaining.
Are you looking to add more of these type of properties to your portfolio?
I don't know if I would look to add, like from our legal rooming house. It was something that I looked at the time and thought, hey, I think I can do something great with this. But there's just simply not a lot of them around. I've been in some of the other, I call them rooming houses in the area. They've come up for sale, but they are not in the kind of shape I think I want to contend with. So I don't know. My answer is I don't know. We'll see. Maybe.
Yeah. For listeners' benefit, please understand Melissa's property is not like most rooming houses out there.
No.
At the rooming houses I see, it's usually pretty tired. There's always people on the front porch smoking or drinking. That's just my observation, and I'm saying that's true of all of them. Yeah. And they're doing that during working hours, right? Again, I'm not saying that's for all of them, but that's just my observation of because I know my neighborhoods. I know where the rooming houses are.
Yep.
right? Well, again, just like you, we've looked at purchasing them, so it's something that I have to study. Fascinating. So, okay, what's to make up the rest of your portfolio? That's in Canada for now.
I feel like I've got a little bit of everything.
Uh-huh.
I've got single family homes. I've got a townhouse condo. There's a condo in Montreal. There's a couple smaller multi-unit buildings as well too. Some in varying stage of permit renovation. I actually just got a permit approval on one property, so I can now go ahead with actually splitting one unit into two, and so I'm super excited about that. It's been a long time coming, and yeah, so more on the smaller side, and as I've learned and grown as an investor,
Mm-hmm.
that's been significant and important, because every time I would acquire a property, I would do something more, do something bigger, or take on more work with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I would learn through that myself, which is
Right.
great. And then again, our tenants that rent it are more of the everyday type of person. So some are working professionals, of course, but it's yeah, just kind of more the everyman type of property, you know, families and like people live here, right?
Mhm.
They live in these homes, so that's worked really well, and
Right.
I've enjoyed it. So we have a number now. There are a couple in downtown St. Catharines as well too that we are in stages of permit application with. That we haven't submitted it yet, just consulting with engineer and HVAC, but really just looking to create more value and add more density to those units, which is really appealing for a number of reasons. And it will also change what our portfolio looks like, because now again we're adding like different types of buildings to it. So like they're both zoned as commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So how you go about and apply and do things is different, and I'm learning all along the way, leaning on my investor friends with questions, and they've been generous with their time and helping me figure some of the stuff out that I need to know. And
Mm-hmm.
so that'll change how it looks. Like in terms of where it's going, of course, international, we can talk about that.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Multifamily in general is something that I just think it's the way things are going with the cost of housing and the affordability for the people that are going to live them, particularly in our area. So I do see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then what are you looking for in terms of property? Are these usually beaten up, or
Something needs work.
how much work? Or where do you draw the line?
Where do you draw the line? That's a good question.
Like, for example, I generally won't touch anything with a busted foundation. That's pretty much the only line I draw.
I would say yeah. So something with a poor foundation, I would say no. I mean, but I've purchased a place that had no running water, and we couldn't figure out why. We'd call in a plumber and deal with that, right? I'm like, the water doesn't turn on. I'm not sure what happened here.
So at the main,
The water
main
wasn't on
switch.
in the house, and there was no conclusive way to determine why that was the case, and the owner was not very forthcoming with anything either.
he's hiding something.
And so I said, well, I guess we're just going to see what's involved here. We'll get a plumber out and get them to deal with it. And it turned out to be a minor issue, actually. So I don't know why they couldn't just
What
share
was
what
the
the
minor
problem
issue?
was. There was something along with the connection somewhere that something was leaking. I think what I think happened is that at some point a pipe burst, it was frozen, and he just said, screw it, I'm not even tracing this through the lines, and shut everything down. The place was empty for months and months. It was actually really rewarding to be able to bring that back onto the market for someone to live in.
Was this a pretty messed up house?
No, I wouldn't say it was messed up. There was some older laminate, probably
Right.
maybe the original kitchen.
Okay.
There was some new carpet in some of the areas, which I ripped all out. My husband, he's like, why are you taking out new carpet? I said, it's ugly. It needs to come out.
It won't stay new for long in a rental.
We renovated the upstairs bathroom, so that was new, and put new vinyl plank flooring throughout. The trim in this place, you know, the old wooden style trim, like the wide stuff that you see in older homes?
Mm-hmm.
So I had
Love
that
it.
throughout. I actually restained it all a darker, I don't know what the color was, but we'll just say a really dark brown, something a little bit more current in terms of the color, which took forever. But I just thought I wanted to keep the character in the home. And we finished the loft area as well too. It had been previously unfinished, so it's like a whole bonus living space. And then we put it on the market. It's been good.
Okay, tell us about this more recent deal. Like, what kind of property is it? How many units?
More recent deal. Which one?
The one you're just talking about now, the frozen pipe and flooded.
Oh yeah, so no, so that one was that I picked up that up probably a couple years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah. So the most recent one actually, acquisition wise, I think would have been the rooming house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because as you talk, I hear a lot of Christian Spillfogle out of you.
Christian's amazing.
Yeah, you mentioned you've leveraged investor friends. So this is something I find is often missed in our circles.
Mm-hmm.
Is a lot of people don't know how to leverage investor friends. Like for example, I get random questions all the time. I don't mind taking a question or two. It's just I find there's a lot of people that do not know, who did not read the book How to Win Friends, Influence People, right? 17 listeners, if you haven't read it, please read it. It will change all your relationship building skills. So how do you get Christian's ear? Because he's quite successful and wealthy. He doesn't need to help people. How did you get him to help you?
I would say that, like in general, let's talk about Christian for a second, and this is really funny if he watches this, but Christian's the kind of person who wants to help people. And I'm trying to think of where did we meet? We met at some conference. So I'll back it up just a little bit in terms of the networking piece. As an investor, you're kind of a lone wolf. You're out there doing your things. People talk about networking. We see more on social media now, but that's probably more of a recent thing. Up until a couple years ago, so my daughter she's about to turn 4. So when I went on mat leave with my daughter, it was the first time I started attending real estate events. And just going out there, I would drive to Cambridge, I would drive to Ottawa by myself and just go and attend these things and just kind of make friends. And I've always been like that in general, but specifically doing with a real estate focus. And that's how I started meeting people. And I'm pretty sure that's how I met Christian as well too. And we actually did end up working together on a committee. We were looking at putting together a lobbying group for landlords. And so myself, Christian, Elizabeth Kelly, Tony Miller, we spent a fair bit of time together just working through that as like a concept. And then it ended up not going forward, which is okay. But we developed a friendship through that as well too. And then we've kept in touch. And I try really hard, especially when we know those who are doing things well, doing things right. They're also quite busy. Their time is valuable. So I try to make it a habit of not imposing on people's time and just kind of reaching out like, hey, I've got a question. Is this something you can help with? When would be good for you? Instead of just assuming everyone's available at my beck and call, because that's not really the case. And I just think it's a mutual respect back and forth. So I'd like to think I help Christian on some things, and he definitely helps me. So.
Yeah. So he's like your mentor then? He's not your paid coach or anything like that?
No, although he does offer coaching selectively. And again, something he does because he wants to, but I would think that anyone fortunate enough to be in that program is going to really learn a lot.
And same thing with Elizabeth Kelly?
Yeah, I love Elizabeth. I actually did engage Elizabeth for coaching. So after we had gone through that lobbying group thing, we kept in touch. And for me, I wanted to make sure there's a lot of people out there that call themselves coaches or act as their coaches, and I'm just not really sure what they have to substantiate that. So I spent some time just watching Elizabeth, seeing how she does things. She's got a wealth of experience, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to learn from someone who was compatible with me in terms of a working relationship, but also had knew more than I did, right? I can Google with the best of them, but at some point you hit a bit of a wall and you say, I need someone with experience. And we talk about, someone making time for you. That sometimes it means you have to pay for their time. And I'm perfectly okay with that. So I engaged Elizabeth for coaching. She really helped me a lot, shortcut my learning on a lot of things so I could figure out what were some new things maybe I wanted to try and do and strategies and whatnot. And she's been continually supportive of everything that I've done long since I've exited that program as well too. And
that's good.
Yeah, she's just a good quality person.
I spoke to someone recently where someone who hired a coach ran into massive financial difficulty based on the coaching they received, and the coach would no longer support them because their term is over. So Looks like you got lucky.
Yeah.
Or your Googling skills worked in terms of your reference checking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's due diligence with everything, including coaches, right? And but I speak highly of both of them because I think they're both have a lot of integrity in what they do, how they run their business, their coaching. It's great, and I know that I've benefited from that. So another person surely would. But yeah, yeah, it's
fantastic. Good. All right, let's talk about Are you working with partners as well on your current portfolio, on your current properties?
Not really. You know, a bit on the international stuff that we talked about, but no. No.
Why not? I don't either, so I'm just always curious why this don't.
I wouldn't say it's something I intentionally did, but over time it did become intentional. And I just, at the end of the day, I have to answer to myself, and that's enough for me. If things aren't going right, and sometimes things don't go right, I can make all the decisions, step in, handle it, and I just simply don't have to worry about another person in the mix. So real estate investing can be difficult enough. It's not as easy as I think some people do think.
It's not as easy as what you see on Instagram or HGTV.
It is not, and we've all seen those shows. But I just felt that people are messy as well too, and I just didn't really want that added complication to it. I have done some partnerships. So I did a partnership on a flip that I did, and that went well, and it was fine. It was great, but it was a short-term situation, right? And I needed to make sure as well too, because when it came to the funding, and it was private funding for it, although we had a partnership on the deal, I was personally guaranteeing that mortgage. So I need to make sure that I also have the decision making when it comes to selling this place, because I don't need my financial position dictated by another person who maybe starts getting, we'll say, frustrated over how they see things are going and the money thing. I just need to be able to make a decision. It's a business, and I can act in that manner. I don't get emotionally attached to something. So I just really felt that it wasn't necessarily right for me, and that's okay. I've been good with that. Does it mean that I don't have 100 properties? No, I don't, and I'm not trying to keep up with anybody, right? I don't feel this need to collect properties, and in doing so, collect all these relationships with people that are completely outside of my control of what can happen. So, yeah, it was just the mess factor. I figured not.
Yeah, I need to check on some of those other folks who I know who had 100 plus properties. There's the two folks I know really regret it. Like, and not just because of all those relationships, but like I don't think they made money. I think they might even lost money. And can you imagine that? Having a 100 property portfolio and losing money?
I mean, I have a much smaller one, and it's losing money as well too, right? I mean, that's something I think a lot of investors are dealing with right now. They're dealing with rising interest rates, variable rate mortgages, and managing the cash flow on that, and feeling a lot of pain. To me, like, the only way to really work through that is generating more income and doing it in an ethical way, right? You can't just start telling your tenants, pay more, I'm selling, and kind of bully tactics. I understand sometimes that's the reality, but we don't employ those tactics ourselves. So my intention was never to sell anything in our portfolio for the foreseeable future. So really, I'm just looking at what are options I have to increase income, which is where maybe some renovations come in, increasing, the value of a place, how much rent it brings in, and that kind of thing. So that's really good. But again, I can make all those decisions however I want to, for better or for worse, myself, because I don't have another person I need to factor in. Right? So for me, it's just my preference.
Can you give us an example on an existing property that you're doing to increase income?
Yeah, so I actually it's an existing triplex in Welland. And we are, so there's a 1-bedroom unit that became vacant a year and a half ago, which is quite some time. We ended up having to go through a committee of adjustments to get approval on a variance on parking prior to getting our permit approval. And that is a process that takes some time. And I didn't want to put anyone in the property during that time because, firstly, I didn't want to have to displace them later. And second, even if they're in agreement and say that's okay, it fits my timeline, when the push comes to shove, it probably doesn't, and you have a problem.
See it all the time. Tenants are never happy with those situations.
No, so it wasn't supposed to take a year and a half, but it did. And, again, it is what it is. So now we've got permit approval, and we're going to split that unit into 2 I'll call them micro units. They're bachelors. So about 250, 260 square foot each. And so they're going to be quite small. But for me, again, I think...
That is small.
It is small. It is small. So
not as small as your rooming house, but...
but we're going to do what we can in terms of functionality. And again, that type of unit is intentional on my end. We have people who even are working or are on a fixed income. And that could be anyone from social assistance to retirees. I mean, that could be, just anyone in that demographic, or someone who just really wants to keep their housing costs low. And I mean, you pay more than what I would rent these out for. You pay more than that to live in a motel room because you can't find access to housing. We have such a shortage of this type of housing. So, so I'm really looking forward to going. And on top of that, it's really going to improve the cash flow for the property, right? So something that currently is cash flow negative, because of the interest rates and whatnot that are there at play, once this renovation is done, will now be at least maintaining itself, if not cash flow positive.
Love it. So so triplex to fourplex.
Triplex to fourplex, yep. And it's within the existing envelope of the building. I did explore a little bit having the carriage house in the back, but
that's a big budget.
It's still a little bit of a newer concept in Welland. I think some people are doing it. Forgive me, I can't remember who. But it's new enough that I just felt that, especially with the neighbor that I have, who's a little difficult and vehemently opposed my application to the committee to even get this done, I just didn't think that was a good fit for this property. So
I love the NIMBYs.
Yeah.
I think that NIMBYs at some point will be considered socially unacceptable at some point.
This is the same person who, this neighbor, he called me an absentee landlord on our first meeting. It was really great. It went super well. While in the same breath admitting that he has rental properties elsewhere. I'm like, sorry, are you an absentee landlord there? Like, what's your problem? But he's always got a problem, so.
Just protecting their self-interest.
Yeah, it's okay, it's fine, so.
Which is naturally, which is what an NIMBY is. They're just protecting their own, looking for their self-interests.
We can cry about the cost of housing, but at the end of the day, what are you doing to generate more of it to bring the cost down, right? So I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, they are too. They're just opposing yours.
Yeah, so anyways.
Literally not in my neighbor's yard, but yeah, pretty close to NIMBY. That's wonderful. Oh, how much, actually that's a good question. What's going to cost you to convert the 1 unit to 2?
I'll peg it around the 100,000 or so mark, depending on some variables. It's got to be around there because we're going to have to dig up the line coming into the house. We have to increase the size of that. We are going to...
Oh, sorry, is that hydro or water?
That would be water.
All right. Okay.
Water. So, so the line that's coming in currently isn't big enough, so we'll need to do that. We'll need to, of course, run all the stuff inside. There's going to be some fire requirements that we're going to have to meet. We are going to... I want to have both of the rental units separately metered on hydro. Currently, it is separately metered in all the units in the building, so I want to continue that so at least a person can have their own hydro and be responsible for managing that. So I want to do that. And then it's going to be the cosmetic stuff inside and buying appliances and things like that. So even though the units are smaller, there's some things that are just going to cost a certain amount because they're going to cost, and then the rest is subject to what we do, how we finish things. But with the space being so small, I think it'll be pretty manageable.
And these are bachelors, so they get a kitchen and a bathroom.
Yeah, so in the kitchen, so they'll have a bathroom. The bathroom will have, I believe, shower only. They will have ensuite laundry.
Pretty sweet deal.
Yeah.
And then what do you think you can generate in terms of rental income? Well, sorry, what was the rent? What would market rent be for that single unit if you left it as is?
If I left it as is, I'd say probably 1,100 to 1,200 plus hydro.
And then what do you think you can get going forward?
For a self-contained, even though it's a bachelor unit with ensuite laundry, I would say probably around 1,000 a month should be doable.
Oh, so you're almost doubling. You're almost doubling your rental income from one unit.
Yeah. So, and it, like for some people, that is not going to work for them. The space is going to be too small. But I think that there are so many more that it will. And I wouldn't even necessarily, even if I could, probably try and push it beyond that. I'm okay with it being more in the affordable range to have our better pick of tenants, of course, which is always important. And I mean, the math will still work. Right. So unfortunately, we'll be under rent control because it's in an existing space for a rental unit. But we'll see. I mean, I'll reevaluate it at the time. That's what I peg it at. I think that's reasonable, to expect, including the laundry in there and with everything being brand new. And I mean, we'll see if it ends up being a little bit less. Okay. If it's a little bit more, great. But I think it'll be worth the money I got to put into it for sure. That has to be a factor. We can't ignore that. I can talk about being community focused all I want. At the end of the day, the dollars do still have to make sense. So there's no question of that. I think that too many people not paying close enough attention to it. And at times I've been guilty, but that's how they really get themselves into trouble. And now when we have rising rates, managing costs, you have very limited levers you can pull to address that, right?
Can I ask how you're financing the renovation?
So I currently have access to a line of credit that I would use to do that. So again, I'm looking at how am I going to fund this now, but then what are my options going to be when I go and say, okay, I want to refinance this place and clear that line of credit. Am I going to be able to do so? And the answer is, I don't know. And I don't know necessarily just in the context of this property. It's going to add the value to the property itself, but in the context of my portfolio and what a lender is going to look at, that question is going to be up in the air until we hit D-Day, right? There's no question about that. So that's also why I've been pretty cautious about some of the other things that I'm doing. And, I want to make sure I have the funding I need to do the project I want to do. And if I can't pull all that money back out, I need to be prepared for that. Is that still going to be okay? Right. So but that's how I'm doing it.
So I love this conversation because like you're trying to cover all your bases. Like it's pretty much a no-brainer investment. Spend $100 to double your rental income.
And even if
just one more thought. We don't know how it's going to reappraise.
No, not 100%. I don't know, and I don't know what the lender sentiment's going to be with a real estate investor, given all the defaults I'm sure that are happening right now in the market. So that's kind of a thing. Even if I've miscalculated that at the start, again, I have a rough idea of what these renovations will cost because I've been involved in quite a few of them at this point, but I don't 100% know. I couldn't firm up my quotes with people because I knew I was going through that committee process, and the quotes would have changed because of material change costs and things like that anyways. So even if I've underestimated that right now, let's say it's 120, let's say it's 140,000, it still makes sense, right? If I can get it done cheaper, wonderful. But if I don't, I've got that leeway, and that was really important to me when I was kind of embarking on the project. That was before the rates and everything changed even, right? So.
One thing I've noticed among my clients and even myself, if we run into any sort of trouble with our portfolio, I find often just selling one property will alleviate almost everything. Right? You're the same? Because it sounds like you've discerningly grown your portfolio.
I've definitely learned a lot along the way too. Again, I started out thinking I knew certain things, and then I look back, I'm like, ooh, wow, Melissa, you really learned some things on that one, right? I was speaking with another investor on this the other day that some people might feel that maybe they've failed somehow if they need to or want to sell a rental property to alleviate that pressure. And I think we need to take that weight off of ourselves and just say, you're not a failure. Even if it's your only property, you're not a failure if you're mitigating a situation that you need to mitigate. That's called being an adult, right? You need to do that. So, I mean, I have a number of properties, and I've had this conversation with my husband as well, too, and he doesn't really get involved in the real estate. It's just kind of my thing, and he lets me do whatever, be a cowboy. So, but, he kind of said the same thing. Well, why don't you just sell a property? And we could do that. And I think that people who need to consider that should and not feel bad about it. We have tenants that live in these properties. I'm not really looking to potentially put someone in a situation where they could be displaced. And it was never my intention to sell. So my first goal is, can I mitigate this from a cash flow perspective? What can I do to generate the income to make it still make sense for me? But at some point, that comes into the equation, is maybe we need to sell something to kind of offset and address this over here and stabilize everything from a cash flow perspective. And that's okay too. Yeah.
Because your HELOC is probably over 6%, I'm guessing.
Yeah, something like that.
Right. So if you sell one property, you're going to be saving 6%. 6% or more.
Yeah.
That's pretty attractive. So I don't think anyone's wrong to consider selling off one of their properties or two of their properties, whatever, to get out of a pickle.
No, and it's really just sitting down and looking at what are my options available? What's my current situation?
Yeah.
What's my picture?
Yeah.
What does my cash flow look like? Have I properly assessed what that cash flow looks? Do I have in here capital expenses and maintenance and property management and vacancy costs and all those things? Once they're kind of built in, when you look at your true cash flow, if you say, wow, this is really not working, it's not going to work long term, you have to have a plan, and that could be selling a property. And I think that that's okay. Like, give people permission to do that. There's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely.
There's just this mindset of I gotta get more. More is not necessarily better, right?
More can be more problems.
More headaches.
And you run into them, especially since you're managing.
Yes.
Right. You're managing both. You're managing both the renovations. You're basically sounds like you're your own general contractor.
In some cases,
Right.
yep.
And you manage your own properties, and you have a PM company as well, property management company as well.
Yes, I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I know you like to read.
I love to read.
I'm currently reading Confidence Game. Have you heard of that one?
No.
A friend of mine that works at Google recommended it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually recommend everyone in our community read it because it's more pertinent for these times than ever. Because again, my friend at Google is also a real estate investor, and he's been burnt by a con person who was a coach, right? So just in our own exchanges, I'll say, that's crazy that this person burnt you. They seem so confident. I have like zero confidence. I've been at this for a while. I have extensive track record, both my portfolio and my clients' portfolios. Yet I'm still learning every day. So I said to him, I have very little confidence. I'm a white belt. Versus I see all these influencers who are massively confident, but what people don't realize behind the scenes is some of them are crumbling, right? Their businesses are crumbling, their portfolios are crumbling, their coaching clients are crumbling. So what I learned, so this is actually it's actually quite well documented all throughout history. Like, what's the name of that Leonardo DiCaprio, Catch Me If You Can?
Yes.
Right? Like that. Like, there's quite a few instances of people like that character, were just con people, and the commonality between all of them was they're con people, which is actually short for confidence. They were all incredibly confident and convinced everyone they were airplane pilots, surgeons, university professors, and that'd be the same person, right? And they'd have multiple partners in terms of spouses.
It's just crazy.
Absolutely crazy. I couldn't do it because my brain would melt, right? To be able to basically be a pathological liar, right? To let me operate on this person. To assume that kind of risk level, and all these people are all watching you, and then now my point is we see it now in the real estate community as well. We see con people who are not necessarily evil, but they are incredibly confident, and then where they fail is often they're so confident in themselves they don't see their blind spots, right? Versus your approach is you're looking for blind spots.
I'm always trying to, and I think, so my background is coming from finance too. I worked in banking for a long time and consulting with investing. I was, licensed to do so. So
Right.
I've got a long history of working with other people's money,
Right.
and helping them make decisions that work for them. I wouldn't
Right.
say telling them what's good for them, but helping them make those decisions that are going to work for them, because it's
Right.
not for me to dictate how someone handles their finances. If they wanted my help, then we could talk through what were their priorities and what were the best things to do. So I think that that's really extended into the real estate piece, and it's also extended the property management piece, is that, if there's something that I haven't done before or something that I'm not 100% sure on, I will disclose that. I'm okay saying, hey, I don't know, or I haven't done this, or if we're willing to do this together, just know that there's probably going to be some learning spots on it. And then you make the decision whether that works for you or not. I would rather do that than the whole fake it till you make it with other people's money and properties. I'm just not okay with that.
Clients.
Right? I'm just not okay with it. And, I'm sure that there's times where some people may, instead of going with us, go with another person because they have that type of confidence you're talking about, but I'm not sure that it really serves them well. I mean, I it's okay, and maybe it does, maybe it works out well for them, but I'm okay admitting where I I don't know, right?
Mhm.
And I think we need to see more of that as well too. And
We'll see it when we see all these power sales come out.
yeah, all those power sales are going to happen. I mean, I've sat
We're
in
all
office.
going to see it. We're going to all find out who the sellers are, and then and with social media
Yes.
and internet, it's so easy to trace back who they are,
Like, don't hide from it.
who they were trained by.
Yeah, I mean, my advice to those people, if they're, is to get ahead of that and start making your moves now and kind of improving things and taking better steps forward, because it's going to come out, right? It's going to come out.
Yeah,
so.
a gentleman was telling me on the weekend he had sold, I think, like 7 or 12 plex or something up north to somebody. Oh, who bought it? You can tell me who bought it. Like, did you check them? Like, did you reference check them? Like, no. I'm like, okay, what's their name? I open my Facebook app, type in their name, and the way social media is, I know exactly who their friends are, who trained them, and so I warned them, this may not go through. So just be ready for it. He goes, wow, you did all that? Like, people post all this on
Google.
social media.
Check the Google.
Not even checking Google. It's
Facebook.
Mark Zuckerberg tracked it all for you.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, it's like, be careful, because there's challenges out there, and yeah. So yeah, he thanked me for it. He's checking to make sure his deposit's good.
Yeah. I mean, I've had that. Yeah, I use a real estate agent for every single one of my sales and most of my buys. And the buys that I do, even if they're private, I still have my real estate agent through, because usually it's something that, hey, this is a flip and I'm going to need you to sell this after you seeing what I'm seeing. And I value the real estate agents that I work with, because they bring something to the table for me. Do they get paid? Yes, they do. But just because the market's, things are selling very well, or like, it's just not so easy to have all the knowledge and experience realtor will give you. So I'm a big fan of working with one, and I do so myself. And yeah, it's a little bit of due diligence really goes a long way. And when deals go sideways, I guess that was kind of the point I was getting to. If the deal goes sideways and something needs to be negotiated or handled, and real estate, like, something's always going sideways. There's something that's coming up with every property. There's a problem, there's a negotiation issue, there's always something, and just, you need to be prepared, expect it, to handle it. But are you working with qualified buyers as well too, is something that I've also run into quite a bit. If I put an offer on a place that's a private buy, that comes along with, just so you know, I'm a legitimate person who can actually fund this deal. They want to know that.
Versus
right?
if you're a wholesaler and you need
when
to
I'm selling a
sign
place, if it's a flip, do these people seem like they can realistically actually close on this, right? So it's important to keep that in mind for sure.
Yeah, because you don't want to be selling to a wholesaler.
I don't even care if I sell to a wholesaler per se. It's just, it needs to be someone that can actually close on the deal if that's the case, right? I mean, what they do is that once they own it is up to them, right? It's
just about real estate investing is, like, for example, we have one client who's going to be suing the person who bought from a wholesaler. It's going to be like $300,000 in losses.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, and then we have another case. Can't go into too much detail, but there was a non-disclosure, a material non-disclosure, and also wholesale deal. We advised the client not to buy it. They still did, and then the furnace stopped working in the middle of this winter.
Okay.
So they got frozen pipe burst.
Oh no.
And it was supposed to close. It's supposed to close in 2 days.
Oh no.
Right. And so when you go into difficult properties, you need to understand buyer beware, especially if agents aren't involved. In our experience, if it's wholesale, we're having way more difficulty with the properties. We had one client buy a wholesale property. Seller didn't disclose a major foundation issue. Right. It was behind drywall, so no one could see it. It was under a deck behind drywall. It looks like I always think the worst. I think they hit it. Right.
I had on the topic of wholesale, I've purchased from a wholesaler, and the property had issues, and we knew this, right? It was quite apparent that there had been a problem with the property, and that was okay. We go in, dealing with that. I call it like my flop. This one ended up being a flop because as it turned out is that, and the seller did not, I'm going to say that I would think it's likely the seller did not disclose it to the wholesaler. I don't know.
Ask questions.
Either way, the information didn't make its way to me. But right before we were about to list this property for sale, we get a letter from the city that there's an open permit on the property. And not just any permit. There's an engineering component to it where they wanted to inspect kind of the framing at the front and like a bit of the foundation. And after all my investigation and kind of where it shook out at the end of the day, what I think happened is that they put in a claim with their insurance company. The adjuster came out. They got this big quote to do all this work, which quite frankly were very minor items and inspection points as it turned out. But once that permit is open, you have no choice but to close it. They took their money for the settlement, sold the house, and then I was left to deal with it.
And no one pulled title?
So title insurance generally covers things like this. You have to do a specific search with the city for things like bylaw complaints and stuff like that. And a lot of lawyers probably don't do that. Some I've specifically asked for it, but I would find it as a normal course that doesn't get done. Would that have found this? Yes, it would have. Title insurance has been a bit of a nightmare to deal with.
Great.
And the latest is because I no longer own the property, now it's not a valid claim. So I'm going to have to go back and look through all that and see. But I had to hold this property for a year to deal with this issue. Right? And a property that, while I brought it back to life and significantly improved it from a cosmetic standpoint, dealt with some of the bones of the place that needed to be dealt with, was supposed to turn a profit. Of course, and there's an expectation of profit on it. I think I've got $900 in the bank after all is said and done. So I'm fortunate that I'm not in the position where some people are upside down, underwater, losing money. But I think that's also, again, a reflection of just being prudent. And it was me that was dealing with that, not me and a partner.
Yeah, imagine you had a partner.
That would have been a whole different kind of pressure and situation. So, yeah, anyways.
Lesson learned in my experience, like, if it's wholesale, extra due diligence.
Yeah.
Way extra, like double the due diligence you would normally do for any sort of property.
And, I would say it's probably fair. I do think that they disclosed most, if not everything that they had there. And I don't want to say that I think that they held anything back. I look back again, what did I learn from this? I learned that when I walk into a property like that, there's some extra things I should be doing every time without question. And if I had done so, I could have resolved this a lot sooner than I did and possibly, seen some of the profit that I was looking to get, right? So I have to look to myself as well too. Every real estate deal that I do, I have a responsibility to make sure certain things happen because I can't always trust that other people are going to, or that they're looking at it from my perspective, right? So, yeah.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows, is it?
It's not. It's not. Are you sure it's not? Maybe it is in Mexico.
I was going to say Belize.
Belize too.
I imagine there's good things about Belize while you're there.
Belize is beautiful. It's a lovely country. Yeah.
Are you a scuba diver? Is that why you're in Belize?
Nope. Can't. No. Definitely not.
Why'd you eat in Belize then?
I'm scared of a lot. I'm scared of heights. I'm scared of open water.
Okay.
I'm scared of swimming. I'm scared of all these things. But I'll still do stuff. So to be in a place like Belize, I'm just there's so many scary things. But I go and I just try to enjoy it anyways. Right. I'm definitely not a scuba diver though. I've never done it in my life.
And there's gotta be poisonous snakes and stuff and
probably
giant spiders. Like it's Caribbean. Like that's when you don't have winters that kill stuff, then stuff lives and grows bigger and gets more aggressive.
Oh my gosh. Although when I was there one time, I did swim with sharks. Sharks. So for all those things I'm scared of, I still just try and experience life anyway. So it was pretty cool.
So what's the plan with Belize? Are you buying for recreation? You buying Airbnbs or just vacation property for yourself?
So right now, land purchases.
Land purchase.
So Belize has a population of about 400,000 people. And where I've been buying is on Ambergris Caye. And there's about 14,000 people, give or take, live on the island. I double checked just to kind of make sure, just to give some context of the size of this place. So on Ambergris Caye, San Pedro's the town, and that's where they have their little airport that you can fly into. And there's an area called Secret Beach. And so Secret Beach is where I've purchased some lots. And then North Ambergris Caye is actually where I've purchased a beachfront as well too. So it's all land purchases, and the island it's an island. Well, it's a key, but it's an island, and it's still going to be developing over time. For example, in the Secret Beach area, everyone's off of solar. You know, there's no hydro lines running there yet.
Oh boy.
We hope that that'll come in the future, but people are still building, and there are people who are living there, and some are renting their places out, and that's lovely. And you know, I think that the future looks super bright for the area, but right now it's land purchases. I've looked at purchasing actually built properties there, but I just found that the price point for me to do that didn't really fit with what I would need to put out, and also in conjunction with some of the other things I have going on, like my projects that need to be funded, because when you have to cash buy, right? So you better be ready to leave your cash there and let it do what it's going to do. So the land that I own is land banked, right? It doesn't earn me any income, so there's only so much of that we can do. The prospect of any building on it is probably years away. It could be a couple, it could be a few, it could be several, depending on which lot we're talking about. But it's definitely a wonderful community. I've actually bought land there before I even visited Belize during COVID. I just bought land into a country I've never been in, so that was different. But when I actually got to go there, it was like, you know, when you travel places and they just feel like home. That's what it felt like there. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. So then we bought some more, and that's where the beachfront came into.
Do you use agents and lawyers and all this? Like, how is your land secured?
So there was a title company that we used that did all the searches, and they made sure if we needed to have a survey done of the land and things like that. So there are agents that are there that you can work with as well too. It is important to make sure that you're getting the title that you think you're getting, and that the person who's selling it to you is actually able to sell it to you, and everything works super slow in Belize as well too. So it takes months and months to close on stuff, and so it was just really kind of getting to know. I have a friend that's down there that had some contacts as well too, so getting to meet some of those people that maybe I've been dealing with, like through email and over the phone, but title closing, like you have to still have to have your professionals in place.
Right.
I would say that the regulations are a little bit different than they are here in Canada. Like here, a lawyer's got to deal with that, whereas there, I don't think they necessarily need to be a lawyer, per se.
Less stringent regulations?
Yeah. So you just want to make sure, like with anything, that you're looking at who you're dealing with.
What's the plan? Do you plan on building? You plan to selling them off, or build one for yourself and sell the rest for profit?
We'll probably eventually build it. I just don't know yet. Right? I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. And it may sound strange to buy land and not really have a plan to develop it, but the price point and going in with some of these was so low that it didn't matter, right? I really looked at it as what's the worst that can happen, and I didn't really feel that it was going to be that bad if that did. So now the value of the land has increased. Maybe it'll make sense to sell it. Maybe we'll sit on it longer, let everything develop around it. Maybe we'll build on it and rent it out. We'll see.
What does a lot go for?
In the area that I've purchased in, I think most of the lots are in the I'll say 25 to 35,000 US. Some could be more depending on where they're located, proximity to the water, of course. The ones that we purchased got a fair bit cheaper than that. They're definitely worth at least that for now, which is great. So.
So I imagine you've already looked into what it would take to build it. I imagine building there is different than here as well.
Yeah, it's different, and because you're out on the quay, they have to barge everything out, so it's actually pretty expensive. And then you have to think, okay, am I building something that needs to go down to the bedrock? Is it going to have a concrete block foundation with rebar in it? Am I going to build something that's going to be a wood structure? Like, there's a lot of variables when it comes to building, because you have to think of where you are, right? You're not really in the hurricane belt, but they had one that was potentially headed their way several weeks ago, and I mean, is your house going to be there after that? You don't build there the same way that you do here. So so I want to say I think estimates were in around 150 US a square foot, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and dig on my notes on that one. Maybe even a bit more for concrete, right? So I mean, you just times that by even a 500 square foot casita, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's a little chunk of money I got to put out, right? So it's got to make sense.
Maybe just wait till there's 3D printing in Belize.
3D print a house, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you build it on concrete, like, but you don't have to worry about the hurricane. Well, you still have to worry about your roof, but at least the rest is structurally fine.
Well, and you have to have like cistern out there and solar panels and
Right.
stuff. So just things I don't really know anything about, right?
Right.
But it's just a matter
Septic? Imagine septic too?
of I think so, yeah.
Okay. So, folks, cistern is for your fresh water for drinking.
Yeah.
Well, to service the house in general.
And some houses out there, they collect rainwater and they filter it through and then they use that, right? So it's actually, to me, pretty economical living. It's pretty cool. I just...
Right. You're off grid.
Yeah, you're off grid. That's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly it. It's just a matter of, for me, I own the land. What am I going to do with it? At some point I will build. What am I going to build? Not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Probably some small houses on that one, and then the beachfront. Again, we will see. It's right near the new Margaritaville that was just put in there, so I think that with
so the commercial restaurant, the franchise, Margaritaville.
Yeah, it's like a whole resort there, and so with that will also come some commercial infrastructure such as a dock out and stuff like that. So, so I'm interested to see how that goes and how that might drive our development of that land that we have that's close by.
Right. And so this was all cash. You did not HELOC money, nothing. It's just cash.
No, just cash.
Right.
Saved it up and spent it.
No, is there any cost of service in the land? Property taxes, anything?
Property taxes and maybe a couple $100 a year.
Okay. So very, very nominal.
Yeah. Aside from that, there's nothing there, right? Nothing to service. So.
Well, here, even if you have land, you're paying property tax.
yeah, and you do. It's just not as much there. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then can we shout out your property management company?
Sure.
What's it called?
Athena Property Management.
Athena Property Management.
Yeah, so Athena Property Management, and we're in the Niagara and the Hamilton area.
Will you take on rooming houses? Student rentals? Where do you draw the line?
Where do I draw the line? That's a good question. So property management companies can manage a wide variety of things. Some are just do bigger buildings only. Some will do smaller stuff. Some will do a mix of stuff. We are in the smaller building to like down to single family home, and it kind of works for us. Would I manage another rooming house? Maybe. I mean, I'm okay with challenges. It doesn't faze me. You know, we're willing to take on complicated cases, and we regularly do because people just don't want to deal with the problem anymore, and so that's what property management steps in to do, right? Specifically targeted student housing. To me, I feel that's a little bit of a niche market, and it's not something that we're currently in. Could we do it at some point? Maybe, but yeah.
It is niche. I had someone message me over Instagram saying that their property manager screwed them. Granted, their properties were not in good areas. So my reply back to him was, in my experience, most property managers will not take on properties in bad areas. So you're basically stuck with what's left.
Yeah, I have. So if you're familiar with St. Catharines in the Queenston Street area, super problematic. It's actually where our office is. It's right smack in the middle of things on Queenston Street. And we manage some properties in that area, and they are challenging for a number of reasons. And that's okay. Again, is everyone going to do that? No, they just want things to run fairly smoothly, or they want to be dealing with kind of maybe more quality or higher end stuff and the tenants that come with that. But again, I just I'll deal with everybody, everyday people, and sometimes that includes low-income areas. Sometimes it includes problematic neighborhoods. It's okay. We deal with what comes.
How do you ensure that you get paid, both your fee and also for maintenance or repairs or renovations? So
how we run things, and this is probably an important spot to stick on here because property managers themselves are not regulated. If you manage condos, like the condo itself, there's the condo authority, but property managers have no regulating body.
Yeah, nothing.
Right? Yeah. So it's also going to be, as a result, different from one to the other in how they run their business.
Yeah, everyone's different, I find.
Everyone's different. Yeah. How I do it is we collect the rent from the tenants. Our fees are paid out of that. Any maintenance that's been incurred has been paid out of that, and then we forward the net onto the owner. I do it that way for a couple of reasons. I always know where the tenants stand in terms of their rent. So if I have to deal with a problem, I know early on that there is in fact a problem. It keeps our records very clear. It allows us to better service the tenants, and it does, of course, make sure any receivables and stuff like that are paid. So that's, I would say, an extra bonus of it. I think all the other stuff definitely comes first, and it's just helpful for how we run our business.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We're way over time.
All right.
Do you have any social media you want to share, or a book that you have?
I didn't write any books. I just read them. So social media, Athena Property Management is for the business. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Facebook will have most of like listings and stuff that come up. Instagram, still working on how that social media strategy looks. So I'm a little lazy with it. I got to do some better posting. But for myself, it's Eat, Sleep, Real Estate, Repeat. So I like to post. I'll post stuff on things that are going on at the properties, food that I'm eating when I'm traveling, that kind of thing. And something I might find that's helpful for people and whatever. It's my personal Instagram. So
amazing.
Yeah.
And I'll have this all in the show notes because you're going to send this all to me. Melissa, thank you so much for coming in and sharing what's going on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you are definitely way more social investor than most that I know.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy that I personally use in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/YouTube to register for our next class. The link is also in the description as well. I publish at least 2 to 3 videos a week here, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. And if you're just starting out, feel free to ask questions and comment below, and I do the best to answer each of those comments and questions myself. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing from a professional investor, register for our next virtual class. That's at investortraining.ca/YouTube. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.